you're wondering why fans in New York have been losing their shit.
Hey, baby, the Knicks just took another victory home. We go into the All-Star break going up 500.
New York, what's up? We finally here, man.
Knicks on an 8-game winning streak, baby. 4th in the East. Eat this, motherfuckers.
Or why a sad child named Cody has been all over your timeline. It's because after almost a decade of sadness, the New York Knicks are f***ing back.
We're here!
Yes, sir.
And the wildest part is that this is only the beginning of a much larger return to glory for the most valuable franchise in the NBA.
Madison Square Garden Network presents New York Knicks basketball.
But how did a franchise this big miss the playoffs for so long? Let's go back to the last time they made the playoffs. The year's 2013. I'm in college smoking pot for the first time. Sorry, Mom, you sent me to ASU. What else did you expect? I'm watching a Knicks team secure the number 2 seed in the East behind LeBron's Miami Heat. Melo and Amare are at the tail end of the peak of their powers. Jason Kidd, Raymond Felton, and Pablo Prigioni are running point. Rasheed Wallace and Marcus Camby were also on the roster for whatever reason. The problem with this team was that the Knicks were mortgaging their future to try to win now. I mean, Rasheed, Kurt Thomas, Camby, and Kidd were all playing in their 15th season or more. If you're in a hip coffee shop in Brooklyn and are wondering why this sounds familiar, well, it's because the Nets have tried to do this twice. Once with the Celtics' washed pieces, and then again this season with Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge. 2 phenomenal players who were just on the back end of their careers. I mean, Paul Pierce showed more life in this live stream than he ever did once in a Nets uniform.
Hanukkah, you should be here. You can make some money, girl. Stop playing.
And it wasn't that the Knicks sacrificed their draft picks for these old dudes, but it was simply that the rest of the team had little to no youth. The youngest players on the team were Iman Shumpert, James White, and Chris Copeland. Not exactly massive value young assets. The good assets were all traded to get Carmelo into town. The wild thing is that the Knicks didn't even themselves draft picks wise. Like trading for Carmelo, they didn't have to give up too many draft picks. The only player they missed out on because of trading picks was Jamal Murray. This team would get bounced out of the playoffs by Paul George and Danny Granger. I thought Danny Granger was gonna be a GOAT, and oh my goodness was I wrong. He's out of the league in 2 years. Danny, I'm sorry. Ultimately, the Knicks would be betrayed by 2 things: aging of the body and style changing. Body-wise, the insides of Amare's knees would turn into brittle drywall, and the high-volume style of Carmelo Anthony would fall out of fashion. I love Carmelo and I love Amare, but the Knicks literally hitched their wagon and almost all of their cap space to 2 guys whose time in the sun would go and go quickly. The next season, the Knicks would miss the playoffs and Amare would post his worst rebounding numbers of his entire career, marking the beginning of the end of one of the most fun players in NBA history. The real problem for the Knicks here was that Amare was owed $40 million over the next 2 seasons, making him one of the most untradeable contracts in the entire league. Pretty brutal when your highest paid player the next 2 years is a big man that cannot shoot threes and is averaging 11 and 5. Guess those wine baths didn't help, but hey, if you're being paid $40 million, what are you gonna not take wine baths? But there was always free agency to solve that, right? A couple big signings and everything could be fixed. In 2010, the Knicks felt like they were poised to secure the talents of LeBron and or D Wade to play with Amare. They'd miss on both.
Not 5, not 6, not 7.
Fast forward to 2015, the Knicks would go 0 for 3 trying to find a big man to play with Melo, missing on LaMarcus Aldridge, DeAndre Jordan, and Greg Monroe. The next year, the Knicks would strike out on Kevin Durant, and then would strike out again on LeBron a few years later. Drafting the next superstar wasn't any easier for the Knicks, who hadn't really selected one since Patrick Ewing in a draft that was rigged for them to win, which was so long ago that current Knicks security forgot he had even played for the team.
I do want to say one thing, though. I thought this was my building, and I feel terrible that I'm getting stopped. I was like, what the hell? Is this Madison Square Garden?
They dodged the stink bomb that was Jahlil Okafor, only to get stuck with Kristaps Porzingis and his weirdo trainer, who turned KP's knees into crab meat. I mean, look at this. Far be it for me to criticize a workout, but even I know that this is not good. 2 years later, with their next pick, they take a big swing and go for Frankie Smokes, who sucks. Sorry, but who was to know that Donovan Mitchell was going to be the star that he was? Oh yeah, the Knicks did. They were one of the few teams who worked Mitchell out. Mitchell is a New York kid, and still New York took a guy with no discernible definitive basketball skills, but has a dope nickname. Smoke him if you got him. The next draft, they would take Kevin Knox, who also sucks, but at least he has trade value. Yes, Knicks fans, you'd rather have taken SGA, but again, this is all in the past and does not matter because the Knicks are back.
Give Randall the MVP. Give me Randall for MVP. Come on, man.
So the players were bad, the drafts were bad, but the coaches, they were also very bad. The list of coaches who have failed the Knicks is wild. Mike Woodson, Derek Fisher, Kurt Rambis, Jeff Hornacek, David Fizdale, some guy named Mike Miller even got to coach the Knicks. Not that Mike Miller. No, not the Mike Miller I went to high school with. This Mike Miller. Also, the Knicks hired Zen Master Phil Jackson to run the team as GM and president of basketball operations. He lasted 39 months, and here's a quick rundown of every bad move he made in that time. No, there's definitely more. Let it keep playing. That is a stacked 39 months. And we haven't even gotten to Knicks owner James Dolan. Let's be honest, if I told you James Dolan has a jam band, you kind of get exactly what type of guy we're working with here. Instead of working on the team for the last decade, Dolan has spent his time getting into public feuds with Knicks legend Charles Oakley.
Charles Oakley seen getting into a physical altercation with security guards.
Getting into a fight with New York icon Spike Lee.
Then they said, we want you to leave the garden. I put my hands behind my back and I said, arrest me like my brother Charles Oakley.
Complaining to Adam Silver about a video that Bleacher Report made, kicking his own fans out of MSG because they wore shirts that made him mad. Look, I can go on and on about Dolan, but that's either a whole other video or you just gotta take my word for it.
Oh, Knicks, baby! Championship 2022!
Let's go!
That brings us back to present day, where somehow against all odds, after being an easy punchline for almost 10 years, the Knicks are in the playoffs. In large part, thanks to the hiring of Tom Thibodeau, who really is the perfect coach in the perfect place. He's coaching guys that are all young and have a chip on their shoulder and are willing to defend like their lives depend on it. Because let's be honest, playing for Tom Thibodeau, your life does depend on defending. The Knicks also looked around the league and saw that hiring an agent to be GM had worked for the Warriors and the Lakers. The Knicks also saw the impact that Clutch Sports had with the Lakers in helping get free agents in the door. So they hired Leon Rose and have decided that they will use CAA, who is essentially the most powerful talent agency in the world, the same way that LeBron and the Lakers have used Clutch Sports. CAA represents Devin Booker, Embiid, PG-13, CP3, Donovan Mitchell, D'Lo, Cat, and Zion. They also represent Julius Randle. Quickly and RJ are exciting young prospects. Your books aren't a mess of washed superstars anymore. You have the best agency in the game, looking to funnel stars out of small, unimportant places like Phoenix and Minnesota, and even Philly, to get them under the New York lights. And best of all, James Dolan is doing less. So Knicks fans, as you gear up for this playoff run, just realize that you are f***ing set. And I look forward to you guys being annoying again, regardless of what happens.
The Lakers suck! The Knicks are back!
If you enjoyed this video and want to watch more, go to the Buckets YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe. We have videos on D'Lo snitching, Donald Sterling being the craziest owner, doing things you've probably forgotten about, and all sorts of other good content, so tap in.